Hello, welcome. In today's video we're mainly going to talk about PlayStation emulation, starting with the new version of ShadPS4 and also the custom builds that appeared in the last few days, which managed to experimentally run God of War 3 Remaster. On top of that, we've got news from RPCS3, which went almost 90 days without receiving updates on Windows and has now finally been updated again, bringing several fixes. But the big question is, did performance actually improve? We're going to check that out today. We also had progress with Eden, which finally managed to fix an issue many people were waiting for, the audio in Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. And I'll also be showing you tests in several games with the new version of NetherSX2, which brought important improvements in compatibility. Before we start, don't forget to leave a like to help spread the video. And if this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel to keep up with new content every week. If you want to buy original games while saving a lot, check out Instant Gaming, the digital store that sells games for various platforms, such as PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Get games of all genres with discounts of up to 95%. You'll also find a variety of gift cards and credits for other services. You can pay for your order through your credit card on a website with a 4.7 rating on Trustpilot. You're buying games directly from Instant Gaming, not from other retailers. If you encounter any issues, Instant Gaming offers 24/7 support. And this month, Instant Gaming is offering a special discount on Wuchang, with a price at least $10 cheaper than on Steam, making it the lowest price ever for the game. What are you waiting for to save? Links in the description. Starting then with ShadPS4, which reached version 0.11, the big news is that Unreal Engine 4 games can now boot, and some of them are even playable. Another highlight of this update is the new per-game configuration system, meaning you won't need to constantly switch the global settings anymore. Support was also added for the DualShock 4 speakers, along with many other fixes. For anyone who wants to dive deeper, I recommend checking the official changelog, since not everything listed there is really worth commenting on in this video. Last week, 2 unofficial builds also appeared and drew a lot of attention because many people claimed they were running God of War 3 better than RPCS3. I tested those builds, as you can see in the background footage, and that's not quite the case. In the videos being shared, what was mostly shown was a section where the textures loaded completely, which gave the impression the game was playable from start to finish. But in practice, the situation is very different. The textures don't load properly, and the experience is much worse than it looks. I even exchanged info with the Gigabyte channel, and we came to the same conclusions. So, it's still far from being an ideal experience. Titles saying God of War 3 already runs better on ShadPS4 than on RPCS3 are sensationalist. RPCS3, despite its complications especially on older CPUs, is still the best way to play that game. Even so, I'll leave pinned comments with links for those who want to try these unofficial builds. Just go to the Actions tab on GitHub, with your account logged in, and download the files for your operating system. The most recommended version of the game for testing is the European one, and whether or not you use the update makes no difference in terms of performance. Now, talking about RPCS3, many noticed that the Windows version went quite a while without updates. This happened because of a bug in a Microsoft process, which took a long time to be fixed. Thankfully, the issue was resolved and now RPCS3 can be updated normally again on Windows. Among all the improvements that arrived during this period, one that stands out is the resource binding model rewrite, related to Vulkan. This update was split into 2 parts and promises performance gains between 10 and 15% in some games. I tested it to see if that's really the case and brought the results. In Dante's Inferno, our average FPS went up from 564 to 584, a gain of over 3.5%. In God of War 3, FPS increased from 103 to 110, about 7% more performance. In Gran Turismo 6, there was practically no difference, and in Metal Gear Solid 4 performance also stayed the same. So, for those expecting improvements in RPCS3, yes, they exist, but they don't happen in every game. It's also worth remembering that earlier this year the emulator had already received a 10 to 15% performance boost, so adding everything together, it's possible that game you were waiting on has finally become playable now. Moving on to Eden, we've got great news. In a test version, the audio issue in Zelda Echoes of Wisdom was finally fixed. Anyone who has tried that game knows that when you reach certain rifts, a deafening noise would play, forcing you to mute the emulator until you got past that part, which really hurt immersion. On Ryujinx this didn't happen, but there was also no way to fix the bug on Android, until now. I was able to test this experimental version of Eden, and I can confirm the audio problem was fixed 100% on both Windows and Android. However, due to driver incompatibilities or maybe something else still broken in this build, on Android my gameplay was completely bugged, with the character being invisible. But don't worry, when this version gets released as a master build, everything should be working properly. Unfortunately, it's not available yet for the end user, so for now all we can do is wait. Lastly, let's talk about NetherSX2, which has now reached version 2.1. According to the developer, this update brings fixes for both visual issues and performance problems that were present in the previous release. In other words, besides seeing graphical improvements, you should also notice performance gains in several games. Among the main fixes are corrections for titles from the Jack series, GTA San Andreas, Metal Gear Solid 3, Atelier Iris, The Godfather, the Digital Devil series, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Time Splitters, and Hitman Blood Money. On top of that, widescreen and no interlacing cheats were updated, and the controller database was improved so you don't need to manually configure every button. I ran several tests to take a closer look at these improvements. Starting with Ace Combat 4, which I'm currently playing, both the performance issues and especially the broken ground bug were completely fixed. There's still a small problem when looking at the sun, but nothing that compromises gameplay. Since version 2.0, I've already played over 2 hours of this game and can say it's now 100% playable. Another important point is the snowblind engine titles, like Champions, Return to Arms. In this case, despite a slight drop in performance during the first few seconds of gameplay, the game then runs well, without texture errors and with smooth gameplay, only demanding a bit more from the GPU. Crash the Wrath of Cortex had serious problems in previous versions, mainly related to fog, ice transparency in the first stage, and performance drops that forced players to use the software renderer. Fortunately, all those issues have now been resolved, and the game runs in Vulkan with no visual errors at all. As for Final Fantasy, Dirge of Cerberus, while it's still not fully playable, there were important improvements. Previously the HUD and text were completely broken, but now they render correctly. The only problem is that performance is still below expectations, causing slowdown. Unfortunately, some issues still remain, such as in Forgotten Realms, Demon's Stone, where fire and particle effects are still not rendered correctly, regardless of the renderer used. Another example is Jack X Combat Racing, which does have acceptable rendering with some missing shadows, but still struggles with low performance. On the other hand, the Jack and Daxter series games are in much better shape, with correct rendering most of the time and only minor particle issues left. In the case of Metal Gear Solid 3, the pre-rendered cutscenes now display correctly, along with the filters applied by the game. There are still some missing shadows on the ground, which makes the image look a little different from the original, but overall the game is already playable from start to finish without major problems. A game that improved a lot was Need for Speed Underground 2, which used to suffer from graphical bugs and slowdown. In version 2.1, those issues were fixed, and the game now runs at the console's original 30 FPS. On the other hand, Taka Racing 3 remains problematic, with incorrectly rendered objects and unsatisfactory performance. Meanwhile, The Godfather now runs perfectly, without slowdowns and with all graphical elements rendered correctly. For those who like the GTA series and haven't tried this title yet, I highly recommend it. There were also improvements in the Time Splitter series, which still shows minor issues in shadows and reflections but is now fully playable with great performance. The same goes for The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which received important fixes for FMV cutscenes that previously didn't play at all. Now everything works as intended, and gameplay is smooth without slowdowns. Some of you might be wondering about ARMSX2. It's important to be patient, since this is a much more recent project, and it will still take time before it reaches the same level as NetherSX2. For now, the best choice is to enjoy the improvements brought by the current version of Nether, which is already at a much more advanced and mature stage. And that wraps up today's video. Download links for all the projects mentioned will be available in the description or pinned comment. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.